Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Mappamonte. This is Wyatt Darby. We are getting ready to kick off our modern rounds of coverage here. So round number 7 of 9. So 3 more rounds left here. We're going to play some modern. And again, I want to go over the pods, the points, how many people have, what they've accumulated so far. I can tell you basically that 6 points is going to be a lock for top 8 is the way it looks here. So the 2 players that have won both their their Pioneer pod and their Legacy pod, are going to be in. So that's going to be Lewis Kaplan has 6 points, and then Grant Wozniak. They're playing right now. They have 6 points each, so they're going to be in. Lewis actually hasn't lost a game today, believe it or not, and I believe Grant has lost a single game today.
Yeah, Lewis has played some kind of crazy ones. I watched his Legacy match against Dredge, where his Dredge opponent flipped over about 20 cards. Lewis Bojuka bogged. The Dredge player didn't put any creatures in, and he ended up making a 20-20 a couple turns later. It's been kind of wild stuff going on. It looks like we're actually ready to go here for our modern portion. And here we have 2 players who are very high in the standings. In the second pod, Will Chang on Eldrazi versus Ray Huang on Bant Snow. So if these guys are capable of winning this last pod, they are basically in without a doubt to the top 8. And even if they don't win the pod, a 2-1 would put them in a great position too.
Yeah, Will's in a good spot here. He's got 5 points, which means he has 3 points from a pod and then 2 points from another. So he's doing well. And then you mentioned Ray has a pair of 2-1s so far, so he is doing well also. So at 4 points, so he's doing pretty good here. So Eldrazi versus Bant Snow. This is going to be like the new flavor of modern, basically.
Yeah, it's Eldrazi a deck that's been floating around and been quite good since Karn the Great Creator was printed, but Bant Snow is another deck that's pretty dominated by cards from 2019. You see full playsets of Icefang Quaddle, Arkham's Astrolabe, as well as some heavy-hitting Planeswalker threats. And we all know Oko, and there is some Teferi Time Ravelers floating around as well. So kind of the direction of control decks, it seems like in Modern is kind of what Ray's playing. We saw a good presence of this archetype at the SCG Players Championship last weekend. I believe 2 or 3 players registered it. Although Ray is actually playing Snapcaster Mage over Stoneforge Mystic, which seemed to be the more popular direction last weekend.
Okay, yeah, just a more controlling build, it looks like, which is probably going to serve him a little bit better against Eldrazi here with the Snapcaster Mages. All right, so let's see. They've got... So Will cracked that Expedition map, and he's looking through his sideboard here. Maybe he has a Karn or something like that. He wants to figure out what he's doing first. Not sure.
Yeah, cracking map and looks like guaranteeing a turn 3 Tron. You do want to have a plan for what we're tutoring out with Karn if that's something that has on his radar. And yeah, there we do see Karn, and in terms of utility that he can get against kind of a mid-range or control deck here, it looks like he's actually going for value. Liquid Metal Coating, which combined with Karn can be Stone Rain turn after turn, but Ray actually gets to utilize a card that is oftentimes kind of dead in this matchup, firing off a really timely spell Snare.
Yeah, not a bad one there. So how many does Ray have a spell Snare? Just a 1 of, so really good time for that one to pop up as Ray takes a draw step here. See one of those Snapcaster Mages Wyatt was talking about. And Ray has Field of Ruin in his hand, which is going to be another good one here.
Yeah, strong card, but I believe Will has at least 1 backup Tron land in hand. And if Ray decides to spend his turn investing in Disruption of Mana, Will could very, very conceivably, play the backup tower, fetch up Mycosynth Lattice, and then Ray has no recourse, no ability to add something to the battlefield to contest. So it looks like we see a mine getting Field of Ruined, and Will also has an excellent board position. He's, Planeswalker versus nothing is a great spot, and worth noting that that Karn is shutting off Astrolabe. So right now Ray is currently lacking any green mana. And that's one of the kind of sneaky benefits of Karn.
Yeah, you saw Ray attack that mine that you mentioned there. It's important when you play against like these Eldrazi decks, when they use the Expedition map, you almost always want to attack the land that they have to tutor up for. It's the one that they either don't have a copy of or don't have a second copy of, more than likely. So heads up play there by Ray. Let's see where he goes here. He does have that tower you mentioned, so on 4 mana here for a Thought Knot Seer. Pretty good start. And you can see Ray's hand, he's got 4 lands, a Snapcaster Mage, and a Teferi Hero of Dominaria. So not exactly the best hand. Man, it's not great there for Ray.
Yeah, very thin on action. Mystic Sanctuary, doesn't really have a great spell to put back on top, and the fetching of that basic Plains means it's several turns away from being active. And it looks like Will's taking Snapcaster Mage because that's the card that can impact this game in the short term.
Yeah.
As it sits, there's a chance that Teferi might not be castable before something, say, like a Mycosynth Lattice is being put together. And actually, Will is
Yeah.
kind of preempting the Teferi by fetching up a Pithy Needle first. And knowing the coast is clear, no counter magic is currently in Ray's hand, he should be able to sneak that one on the battlefield next turn.
Yeah, looks pretty good there. So he's got that, and Ray goes and deploys another Field of Ruin. Trying to keep Will off mana, but he's in pretty good shape here. Will is. He's going to get that power plant destroyed, it looks like here. So, looks like Ray targeted that power plant. Let's see if Will has any responses. Can use Warping Whale here. Going to make a Eldrazi Scion here. Looks like it. He's got an Eldrazi Scion here, and power plant going to hit the graveyard. Will has how many? Does he have 2?
2 wastes, yeah.
Two
So
wastes, okay.
the rest of the Path to Exiles and Field of Ruins are going to be effectively free for the rest of the game, but still, the first 2 wastes doing a lot to cover Will from the kind of incidental land destruction
Okay.
that these blue-white base control decks have been using in Modern since Field of Ruin was printed.
All right. So he's got access to Reality Smasher. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Definitely has that Pithing Needle in hand that we saw earlier. Looks like he's going to fire that one up. All right. So Will going to lead off on that Pithing Needle. We'll get confirmation, but I assume that's going to be on Teferi, Hero of Dominaria there, as he saw it previously. All right. And Will going to attack in for 4 here.
Yeah, I think from this spot, Will is really just all about resource management. Ray is playing a couple copies of Supreme Verdict, so it's going to be making sure that he's able to leverage enough pressure on the battlefield to end the game quickly,
Sure.
but not really going overboard, And,
Okay.
and the beauty of that is that the card is going to make it a little bit easy to maybe overextend because, a sweeper doesn't deal with the Planeswalker, and there's lots of real advantages to be accrued there. And yeah, Ray's going for a fast clock, but Reality Smasher is met by a top deck mana leak, and that's actually, that came with a real cost. The 1/1 that was made to produce mana, was that Warping Whale was spent to create that one-shot mana.
All right, so you can see Ray here picks up a Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is pretty decent here. Not the best, but find a way to relieve a little bit of pressure at least.
Yeah, Eldrazi Shrine is not a deck that's particularly full of haste creatures. Obviously, Reality Smasher can do a lot of work at cleaning up Planeswalkers, and a Jace the Mind Sculptor with Karn on 3, Will has an opportunity to untap and attack Teferi, and if there's a Path to Exile for Thought-Knot Seer, Sorcerer's Spyglass is another tutor target for Karn to lock an extra Planeswalker down.
Yep.
So maybe a little bit too early to call it this, but kind of feels like a bit of a desperation brainstorm from Ray. He's really close to having this game slip away.
Yeah, he's fishing here, and so he does have the fetch land available. As Will untaps, finds another new power plant. He's got another card in hand. He's going to look through his sideboard again and see kind of where he wants to go. If he wants to activate this card, he's going to. Goes and grabs Sorcerer Spyglass, as you mentioned. That one's probably going after Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, and really nice of Will to do this before he attacks. We actually see Ice Fang Coatl hanging out in Ray's hand.
Great.
And that card is a certifiable Eldrazi killer. It really doesn't matter how big they are. Really great defensive option.
Yeah.
And now Will knows, we're going to hang back with this Thought-Knot Seer for now. Don't want to give Ray any other, favorable trades and lose the 4/4. And especially when you have an Endbringer in your hand, you can kind of wait the Coatl out.
Yeah.
You pinging it for free is obviously a world of difference as opposed to trading a creature. And yeah, solid pickups from Ray. He still has access to the Coatl and Astrolabe to reload. So
Yeah. Looks like Ray might have a chance to come back in this game, actually. He's got the tools to do so. So, looks like Will's going to... Doesn't look like he's going to attack here. All right, there's a Chalice. That's smart. So, Chalice on 1 there for Will. Will's got 3 lock pieces on the board here, and... all right, so there's that Ice Fang. Going to draw a card there. It's Oko. Now that is pretty good against these artifact removal-based hate cards.
yeah, you would think 2 Pithing Needle effects is enough to cover all the Planeswalkers, but if Will wants to completely lock Ray out, he's actually going to have 4 different things.
Yeah.
Oko can interact with these. Baby Teferi can bounce and have those be countered on the way down.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is hard to contain all these planeswalkers. And Ice Fang Coatl doing just that actually, at pecking the Karn down, and not a huge problem for Will. He does have the backup, but resolving the next one isn't always trivial against
Right.
these blue-eye control decks.
All right. So let's see what Ray does. He's got a lot of different options here. He's got Big Teferi. Big Teferi's pretty tough too for Will to deal with. He's got, and the Oko is going to kind of start to domino if he doesn't if Will isn't able to deal with it quickly.
Right, yeah. Oko elking the needle effect, naming Jace allows another activation, which, if Oko is able to then untap, you can elk the other one, and then the Teferi becomes a viable option. So, yeah, it really is on Will to kind of add something else to the battlefield to contain these planeswalkers. But, investing too much in a card like Endbringer does look pretty poor in the face of Oko. You're spending 6 mana for a 3/3 at that point. We've heard this story once or twice before, right?
Yeah. All right. So Sorcerous Spyglass going to turn into an elk. And then this Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to Brainstorm. And yeah, wow. So now he finds an Ice Fang Coatl too, which is great to protect. Yeah, man. Ray's hand's starting to shape up here. You can see the power of Jace the Mind Sculptor going uncontested for a couple turns here.
Yeah, and these Ice Fang Coatls are actually pretty critical at this point. As long as Chalice is on the field, Path to Exile is locked out as interaction, and then the Death Touch on the Ice Fangs becomes kind of the best way for Ray to keep his Planeswalkers on the table.
Yeah. All right, so looks like there's a Thought Not Seer is the play for Will here. Let's see what Ray ends up doing. He does have Ice Fang. He's got a Snapcaster available. He's got a lot of tools going on. So going to fetch down to 9 here at least for Ray.
Yeah, solid chance we'll see like a Cryptic counter tap could be in the future. I believe Ray has one of those in hand, but
Okay.
looks like prioritizing the Ice Fang play, because that does a really good job of dissuading any attacks on Planeswalkers. If Will wants to trade a Thought Not Seer and giving a card back, that can be used to take care of the Jace, but that almost doesn't feel like what the game's really revolving around right now.
He actually looks like he's going to start off with this Snapcaster Mage for a mana leak on that Thought Not Seer. So Thought Not Seer going to hit the bin. And then, Will's hand is not really equipped for what's going on here. He's got another Karn, Endbringer, and a Walking Ballista. And this, man, you got to make some really tough decisions here. So both of these, the Elk and the Thought Not Seer, are going to go attacking the Jace. No blocks for Will there. Or for Ray, excuse me.
Yeah, going after the guaranteed removal of a Planeswalker is pretty sensible, but yeah, the backup Jace being drawn, pretty punishing for Will that's just happened to be the spell, because with 2 Coatls, it's how do you make good trades against this?
So
It's going to have to come down to Walking Ballista really carrying the day and clearing away all of these 1 toughness blockers that Ray's relying on. I mean, I think that if Will could draw any untapped land and have that Walking Ballista for 3 of this game changes dramatically, and especially if it's a Tron land, then he gets to keep it around. So I think this next draw step for Will is really going to be a pivotal moment, and we'll see exactly how Ray wants to manage this board, because there's a lot of options with Oko in particular right now.
Yeah, there's a ton. So you see leads off on that Jace the Mind Sculptor, very powerful Planeswalker. Going to Brainstorm once again. Finds, looks like Spell Pierce, another Field of Ruin, and a Teferi Time Raveler. All right. So Ray going to figure out what cards he wants to keep. Looks like that Field of Ruin is one of them. All right. So Ray's really plugging away here. Looks pretty good for him. So he comes in, still has an activation left on that Oko.
Yeah, and at this point, I could see Oko going a lot of different ways. Elking the Astrolabe still seems reasonable. His mana is developed pretty well, and that all of his colors are readily available. I don't think his hand is particularly full of 1-drops, so Chalice isn't super threatening. And here we actually see Snapcaster getting, kind of upgraded to 3/3 status.
All right. And then Ray going to go ahead After Will's draw step, I'm going to attack. I think this one's just actually Stone Rain here we mentioned, right?
Yeah, this is brutal. This is
Okay.
just knocking Will down to 4 mana, forcing the shuffle, and putting Will the full 2 Tron lands away
Yeah.
from having that extra burst of mana. And, the build of these Astrolabe control decks means Ray is not even particularly close to running out of basics. I would imagine we would take about a half dozen Field of Ruins to get him there.
Yeah, and he has the Codal up now too, so he's in really good shape. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Will to get out of. You have to make some really bad trades in order to get rid of Oko. So Will going to go for a Walking Ballista on 2. Shoots the Ice Fang down with one of those counters. Yeah, this is really rough.
Yeah, so another situation where Ray can kind of force the action on Walking Ballista to trade for the Ice Fang, but it. Oh, and Will lets the trade happen. That's interesting. That's actually very surprising that he wasn't willing to give up the Ballista there.
Yeah, I'm definitely shocked here. So Ray's gonna be able to untap and wow, he's able to he's able to elk that Pithing Needle if he wants. If he wants to play this Teferi, he's in really great shape here now.
Yeah, I think that the corner is officially turned, right? Will's mana is locked up to the point where a good portion, like Will's casting 1 spell a turn for the rest of the game,
Yep.
And Ray is activating 3 Planeswalkers a turn. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as, let's see, you could even do something like Oko Elk a Chalice, Jace bounce it,
Yeah.
if you can't deal with a 3/3 and that still unlocks both of your things, and
Yeah.
it's always felt like a brainstorm and an untap from Jace is kind of the kiss of death. And we've seen Ray's just never been short on action this entire game, and he hasn't been missing the land drops to even really be stifled from playing 2 or 3 cards a turn.
Yeah, I think this Jace has brainstormed 4 times now, and it's just burying Will. You can see his hand is just all business here. Going to go ahead and turn that Astrolabe into an Elk to protect his powerful Planeswalkers, and I mean, it is not looking great for Will Chang here. Ray has a Teferi at the ready. Looks like that's going to be the play. Going to go ahead and go up on that. All right. Yeah, Will's just in lots and lots of trouble here. Dismembers the draw. Not the best. I'm definitely surprised by the not using the Walking Ballista there to take down. It looked like it was going to take down Jace, actually. It was where he was going with those attacks. Just pretty bad stuff there for Will.
Yeah, not choosing not to use an extra Ballista ping means that not only does the Ice Fang get to trade up with a Thought-Knot Seer, that also means another Jace untap. And that's a slippery slope that you can't really allow at this point. And I think we did see a bit of a physical reaction from Will, like immediately post-combat. Just, it might have kind of snapped off too fast, like, the blocks are fine. And it's a brutal spot to be in because as powerful as Oko is in Modern as a format, it just seems exceptionally strong in this matchup in particular. Eldrazi Tron is very reliant on creatures that are larger than 3/3s. They don't necessarily do anything immediately, and some key kind of prisony artifacts like the Chalice of the Void, the Pithing Needle, so on and so forth. So, yeah, Oko is kind of slicing and dicing and just dictating that the game revolves around him in, much the same way we've been seeing a lot lately.
Yeah, Will just going to pack up his cards. I thought he was pretty close to dead for a lot of the turns there, and he says, yeah, you know what, I had enough. So Ray Huang going to pick up game number 1 over Will. And man, that just did not look good once the mid-game started to happen.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't forget that was a turn 3 Tron.
Yes.
Karn it wasn't just the Tron, it's, that Karn fetched up a Liquid Metal Coating that had to be answered immediately.
Yep.
If that wasn't a Spell Snare waiting in Ray's hand, I don't think he ever really gets past 3 mana himself, and the game's just completely different. So, as good as, I think in a lot of ways, Will has a hard time presenting draws that are that much better than the one that game, and, the ease at which Ray handled it makes me think that he's got to be a really solid favorite over the course of 3 games.
Yeah, I definitely with you on that. I'm trying to take a peek here at Will's sideboard. He has, the Karn package, so just taking a peek to see if he can get some help in the post-board matchup. So just taking a peek here, he has 1 Walking Ballista, an additional 1, a Wormcoil Engine, a couple Spatial Contortions, Tormod's Crypt, Grafdigger's Cage, Pithing Needle, 2 Relic of Progenitus, that liquid metal coating we saw, the Sorcerer Spyglass we also saw, and an Ensnaring Bridge, a Witchbane Orb, a Sky Sovereign console flagship, and obviously that Mycosynth Lattice is one of the big payoffs there. So what do you think coming in here? It doesn't look great.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of times Eldrazi Tron's sideboard is, do I want these spatial contortions? Do I want to bring in these relics? Most of the cards stay in the sideboard for
Yeah.
their ability to be tutored. I could see we could look at good cards that aren't necessarily going to be the first to be tutored. Could be the stuff that gets bordered in. And in terms of what Will doesn't want, I mean, I guess Warping Whale seems a bit medium. Dismember
Yeah.
isn't really a card that he wants to draw, although Dismember, like both of these cards carry some value to fight Ice Fang Quaddle, so that might make them okay enough. That being said, I feel like Walking Ballista is a card that you aren't going to tutor for very frequently that can combat Ice Fang in a similar way. And honestly, I feel like one of the best sideboard cards for Will to tutor up is actually that Sky Sovereign. With how much the game revolves around the Planeswalkers and how, Jace in particular sits at 3 loyalty, it just makes it a very easy and appealing target to snipe away with that enter the battlefield trigger.
Yeah, I was thinking about Sky Sovereign. You mentioned the spatial contortions and things like that. I think that card would be better if Ray was playing like the Spell Queller version, which he just has no Spell Quellers in this deck. So definitely interesting there for Will. So a lot of choices. Just taking a peek here at Ray's sideboard to see if he gets better post-board. He has a pair of Ceremonious Rejection, 3 Veil of Summer, a Celestial Purge, a Disdainful Stroke, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Timely Reinforcements, a Supreme Verdict, and 3 Rest in Peace. His deck definitely gets better post-board with these blue permission spells that are going to be tough for Will to get through.
Yeah, and beyond the rejection and disdainful stroke, I mean, Supreme Verdict seems like a very solid card as well. The Eldrazi deck is going to have a hard time winning with just one creature because of, Teferi Bounce, Jace Bounce, Oko Elking. So it's going to be difficult for Ray to not overextend into at least, a solid exchange from the Bant Snow deck. And heck, even a card like Timely Reinforcements does wonders to kind of guarantee the safety of Planeswalkers. So I think that for Ray, it's just a question of, how much of these good things do we want and how many cards, is he interested in cutting? I mean, here, I see, honestly, how good is Spell Snare on average? Probably quite poor. Spell Pierce fights Karn okay, similar for Force of Negation. And, he's not really a deck that gets chaliced on 1 that badly. So I don't know how much he'll need to clutch those forces, and look for them in his opening hands.
Yeah, I'm pretty with you there. Sometimes I've gone to the thought that like Opt is not a great card in post board because all your cards are good. So you're not looking for specifics. It does help you find the colors necessary, but this deck really doesn't have a problem with that due to 4 Astrolabe. It's just, and the fetch lands all getting everything with the inclusion of all these, the fetch lands that make it great, and then the 4 Field of Ruins fixes you too, which is a nuts card against Eldrazi Tron.
Yeah, we really did see the power of Field of Ruin that last game.
Yeah.
It really kind of took the wind out from Will's sails, losing, kind of dropping from 7 mana to 4 in 1 turn cycle and eventually starting to Stone Rain. So looks like we do see Ray kind of showing off the badness of his opening hand as he mulligans here. And, I think that Will's going to need a little bit of that. I feel like, again, his deck is not getting any better positioned in the matchup. And I want to take a look at Ray's player profile. He is a 28-year-old chemist from Madison, Wisconsin. He was one of our at-large players, the 4th overall on the leaderboard, so had an excellent year. Only 1 CT top 8, and being that high on the leaderboard with 1 top 8, to me says it screams consistency.
Definitely.
Lots of top 16 finishes, lots of tournaments that maybe are 1 or 2 draw steps away from going much better. And he is 6-4 against the field. And in terms of accomplishments, he did top 8 in February of this year. He has a Grand Prix top 8. Ray's played on several PTs, pretty regular there. And facts about him: he's a huge Celtics fan. Okay. His first rare opened was Oversoul of Dusk. I don't think I know the text on that one. And he used to work as a monkey caretaker and was exposed to. I feel like are players trolling us with these facts?
They have to be.
What's a monkey virus?
They have to be trolling.
Monkey virus?
I don't know. I find the irony's not lost on me here that Ray is playing against Will and his shirt and team is Team Chang. The irony is not lost on me that they're buddies and they're teammates here. So they are battling away, trying to get into our top 8 here.
Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to show any kind of favoritism, but I have to say that I am Chang Gang. Team Chang MTG is definitely they're represented here on the NRG series.
Definitely, yeah. We see them at a ton of our events. Really great guys all around, and it's good to see them battling it out here for top 8 still alive. So you can see Will leads off on Expedition map, and I think he has the power plant in hand? Maybe it's a second mine.
There is at least an temple, which is one of the
Okay.
pretty critical cards. And here we see it's
Nah, go ahead and say it.
I don't know. It's like a
It's Matter
is it
Reshaper,
bad that
man.
I'd rather play like Rogue Refiner than Matter Reshaper? I know that they're
No.
like basically the same thing, but would just be less embarrassed with that one.
That's fine. You can totally play that card. I think that's totally reasonable. I thought about playing a deck like Eldrazi, turning it into Bant again. I know Ali Warfield played like I believe it was just straight green-white Tron for a little bit, or green-white Eldrazi, excuse me. I just want to play Oko in all my decks, including Tron.
Yeah, I mean, if
And
it's
you can play
banned,
Rogue Refiner.
yeah, I mean, if I can cut Matter Reshaper for Eldrazi Displacer, I mean,
There you go.
whether it's an upgrade or not, I would certainly feel better about it. And what the Reshaper is going to do, though, it'll put some pressure on Planeswalkers. It's not
Yeah.
really one that you particularly want to use a removal spell on. Elking it just makes the card kind of better in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and trading it with Icefang Coatl is always going to be not what Ray wants to do. So here we see, let's see. Will is cracking a map that I believe is going to complete Tron here. So this can be a big turn. Ray is holding on to a mana leak. So that's actually pretty dicey if that will be able to connect and stop some relevant spells. That's not going to work for Reality Smasher, Karn, anything like that. So we'll see exactly what Will can unload with here.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Well, he's got another Matter Reshaper. That's a big, big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine beating two. It probably would require me playing any spell that's modern legal really to do that. And here we see Chalice for 1 being the start. Again, not excellent against Bant Snow, but it hits Astrolabe, it hits Path to Exile, and is going to really make Ray work a little bit harder to answer some of these. And
Oh, he's going to get punished for this. Nope, maybe not.
I don't think there's any mana floating. So yeah, this is actually a Smasher that's capable of being mana leaked, and that's a huge hit. The card was really at risk of being dead just next turn, and instead gets to tag that 5/5.
Yeah, it's kind of a risk you want to run, and Will was probably playing around Path to Exile there for his Reality Smasher, and just kind of didn't have the mana left up, so it's like half dozen in one hand. What is it? 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. So he went for the Chalice on 1, and then was punished by a mana leak. So not great there for Will, but Ray's still under pressure, like you mentioned. He's got this Matter Reshaper beaten down, and he definitely needs to come up with some ways to answer these threats here from Will.
Yeah, and Ray, again, doing actually very similar to what happened last game. Will had an opportunity to have Tron for a turn, and now Field of Ruin is representing the ability to blow that up and really kind of bring Will back down to an equal playing field in terms of mana. And looks like Ray is actually letting the main phase happen, so kind of indicating that there might be a counter spell that he's sitting on. He doesn't know if he can beat a 4 or 5 mana card coming up after the field activation.
Gotcha. Yeah, he has a Snapcaster Mage as a card in hand there. Probably trying to get some value out of that mana leak. But here he's going to get Thought Not Seared. That's a Path to Exile on the bottom there. Is that what that?
Yeah.
The J. Gideon Spellbook one, I think. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yep. And Chalice, is paying dividends here. Will decides to take it. I don't know how much I can endorse that. That being said, I mean, Snapcaster's not doing a ton with just Mana Leak in the graveyard, but I kind of feel like Jace is the thing that you have to take because it's the only card in the hand that is really capable of impacting the board in a meaningful way at this point.
Yeah. So Ray going to take the time now to break Will's Urza's Tower. We're going to dig out a Waste, and Ray digs out a Plains from his deck. Yeah, Ray has a lot of cards left here with that Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, what Will might be doing is just preparing himself for the worst. In the instance that Ray is capable of finding a way to interact with that Chalice, a double path would be pretty good against the board he's presenting.
Sure.
And it could be something where if you feel like you're ahead enough already, that if the Jace plus Snapcaster don't do a ton by themselves, you can win. But that's actually a Supreme Verdict off the top, and it's looking pretty unbelievable on this board, even though Matter Shapers would give Will some cards out on their exit.
Yeah, definitely. So Ray still has a land drop to play this turn as well, so he's in pretty decent shape. Let's see how he decides to put back here for that Brainstorm.
Yeah, it's always just even a one-shot Brainstorm, Jace. Looking fantastic here.
Yeah, definitely was good here. So Ray going to go ahead and put Flooded Strand in play. Will going to untap. There's an Ugin. Well, that was a pretty good draw against the Supreme Verdict in hand there for Ray. He's a little bit short, I think, on mana, though.
Yeah, you know, there's a Snapcaster might choose to trade here. Probably not. I mean, Teferi or Jace is going to die either way. So might want to, you know, maybe chump block just to save himself some life before the inevitable sweeper does get cast.
Yeah, I think the Thought Knot Seer is coming at Ray here, so maybe trying to save some life. Yeah, if you want to stay healthy, yeah, I think he's going to go ahead and jump. The Snapcaster is going to die anyway, so the Supreme Verdict, so going to keep his life total high, go down to 10 off to that fetch land. And we'll see. Ray has that Supreme Verdict rolled up in hand here. If he's able to find like a mana leak in another land, he's going to be in really great shape.
Yeah, and you know, the good news for Will is that there's not that many mana leaks floating around. Was that a ceremonious rejection? Oh my god. Yeah, so I mean the Matter Shapers are basically a lock to find Will the mana he needs for the Ugin, but it's just I mean trading your 6 mana Planeswalker for a 1 mana permission spell is just the definition of kind of brutality, right?
Hangerback and a Chalice.
Oh wait, no. The rejection is rejection chalice. Okay, so there's no way to interact with the Chalice and cast the spell. So it looks like, but the thing is, he actually was able to whiff 3 consecutive times on the land drop. So that's pretty rough. I mean,
it's tough.
Hangerback Walker is okay. You know, unfortunately, pretty vulnerable to fairy bounce and getting Oko'd. But at least if it was hit by an Oko Elking, it would be able to immediately kill the Planeswalker. So that's a bit, you know, well managed there.
Yeah. You saw Will go to tap that mana for Relka Progenitus and realize he has a Chalice of the Void in play, so that's not doing anything. Raysand's starting to get gummed up with ones here, though. He's got an Opt there, a couple Path to Exiles, I think.
Yeah, I think Ray just runnered maybe 3 consecutive 1 mana spells off the top of the library, and right now he's just hanging out. I mean, he is kind of completely at Will's mercy when it comes to, you know, everything that Will does is going to work. So it's just a question of, is this Ugin going to be able to go untouched long enough to take the game home? And I think it will. I mean, it's a card that really does. I mean, it's hard to beat for Faradex. It has the ability to kill Planeswalkers through blockers. You know, the card advantage persists even through another sweeper if Ray is able to find one of those.
All right, so Will has this Ugin. It's pretty hard to commit this into 6 open mana, though.
Yeah, it's definitely scary. You know, the four cards from Ray and 6 open mana.
All right, good for Will. Ray is going to try and check him on the Chalice, looks like, because he was looking for a counterspell. Will says, hey, I have this Chalice of the Void. So Ugin going to go ahead and hit the battlefield here.
Yeah, and I think a solid thing for Ray to do, too. When you see this Planeswalker, you can pretty safely assume that you are going to have a hard time beating it. So, you know, if what you have to do is sneak this op through, then I think it's worth putting it in the graveyard when it is otherwise looking to be pretty dead.
Yeah. All right, so powerful Planeswalker. You see Ugin the Ineffable. I was joking around with Joe when we were doing Legacy rounds. I said, well, all the cards that are on the battlefield are from 2019. A lot of the cards are from 2019 on the battlefield we saw there. So you see Ugin there. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less. The plus ability, which is what Will went for. Exiles the top card of their library face down. They get to look at it still. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. And then when it leaves the battlefield, the token, you get to put the card in your hand. So nice card advantage engine. And then that -3, you get to destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So really good in this matchup. It's a little bit expensive mana-wise, but, you know, I think you need really high threat density if you're Will in this matchup.
Yeah, and the Ugin play is fantastic with your expedition map sequences. You know, when you're spending your first 2 turns playing your map and cracking it, the cost reduction on Ugin is critical. You can have some pretty incredible third turns where you say, play Ugin, all right, free Mind Stone, you know, Matter Reshaper.
Yeah.
And that can kind of let you have a lot of explosive potential before your opponent starts to have their, you know, Cryptic Command mana up, or before they can start to establish those Planeswalkers that cost, you know, more than 3 mana.
Okay. Yeah, taking a peek at that game, is there anything you think you might want to change if you're Ray? I know we saw Chalice played a really big part in that matchup, in that particular game at least. Spell Snare, I think, probably needs to stay in. Spell Pierce, he's on the play again now, so maybe it's not as good. Spell Pierce is hard, but you do know that he has this Ugin, and you know that he has all these all the Karns in the deck too. It's really close, and Spell Piercing Expedition map feels real good on the play.
Yeah, it's hard to balance because I think there are some one mana cards that are untouchable. You need to have your pass. Your Ceremonious Rejections are just too efficient. You're willing to take the risk of them getting chaliced. I actually think this suggestion of cutting the ops is yeah, actually sounds pretty solid. It's a fine card. It gives your Snapcaster a little bit more utility, but even a card like, I mean, I don't know if he doesn't have time in the sideboard, but that might be an upgrade over a card that is going to be potentially uncastable, like 40% of the time. I don't know how often Will is capable of sneaking the chalices through, but yeah, without the ability to stick a Jace and have some filtering to get those one drops out of your hand, yeah, you just kind of run the risk of losing a game that actually for a split second looked very solidly in Ray's favor.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like Will Chang going to take a quick mulligan. Ray looks happy with his 7, and he's going to be on the play for our third game here. First match of Modern. This is, if you kind of take a peek back at the last big tournament, the Star City Players Championship, Bant Snow was everywhere. I don't think there was any Eldrazi Tron in the field, but it's mega popular on Magic Online.
Yeah, not a single, not just Eldrazi Tron, there just weren't any Tron lands. Yeah, and I think that's Eldrazi Tron is a deck that, it's gotten some boosts over the last year. Karn, and it's also, I think, a big benefactor of the London Mulligan.
Yes.
It can't use it quite so, aggressively as traditional Tron can, but, with Eldrazi Tron, I think, at least in my experience with it, you want to be looking for a hand that has, Eldrazi Temple, turn 3 Tron, or a turn 2 Chalice for one. And those are game plans that you can kind of sculpt your way towards with the London Mulligan and getting 7 cards every time. So not surprised to see Will take a pretty kind of free first mulligan, and looking at a second hand that doesn't actually seem to have too many Tron pieces or a Chalice in the end. It looks like Will is going to be going to 5 here.
Yeah, there was a Scavenger Grounds in there. I think he had like a Karn and an Ugin in hand, and he's just never casting those. And he doesn't want to be able to give Ray so much time where he gets to get to those counter spells. So Ray would love to go, a couple turns with Will doing absolutely nothing. That's definitely great for him. Yeah, I'm just taking a peek here to see if there's anything else that was strange that maybe, Will had those Warping Whales in. I'm on the fence. They do exile the Ice Fangs, so you can get rid of blockers, which is interesting. It's also, another body if you want to start attacking after a Wrath or something like that. It's just, for me, it's a tough card to leave in.
Yeah, especially with the lack of utility against Supreme Verdict. The counter-target sorcery text, relevant in some matchups. If your opponent's casting Scapeshift, it's fantastic. But it really seems like the card is going to be, 1/1 removal spell for 1 toughness creatures that have already gotten my opponent value, or an instant speed 1/1. Both modes looking super low impact.
I think Will has that combination you mentioned. There's Eldrazi Temple. I think 2 different Tron lands in there. There was a Ghost Quarter. Looks like those are going to the bottom. Those Ghost Quarter and something else. So Ray gonna lead on an Island and Astrolabe. Finds Ice Fang. All right. Here's the Expedition map. I think Will has Tron with this Expedition map.
Yeah, he also has access to a Chalice for 1 this turn. So it's going to be a question of, does he want to risk the Chalice or instead just take the guaranteed mana development? It looks like it's going to be mapped this turn. Again, after seeing the kind of impact these mana leaks have had in the last 2 games, it does not surprise me in the slightest that we're going to make sure 7 mana is on the table before that Chalice for 1 is getting cast.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I don't think Will actually has a payoff, though, is the big problem. Looks like, there's a Smasher in. No, maybe not. Yeah, I don't think he really has a payoff. There's definitely a Chalice of the Void in there, but he's definitely pretty land heavy. So Ray gonna find a forest. Time for the Ice Fang to draw him a new card. All right. So draws a card. Jace the Mind Sculptor. That one's good. All right. Double. All right. So see what Ray has to do. Gonna go ahead and fetch out here with that Flooded Strand. Signals to me that he has a play here.
Yeah, and a 3-mana Planeswalker on this board would be pretty dominant. Would be able to kind of set up behind the Coatl. And if it was Oko, it's amazing. If it's Baby Teferi, I think it's just okay.
Yeah.
And fetching the basic planes, we'll see which one it is here. Looks like Baby Teferi is going to be the play. Now we'll see if it upticks or instead maybe, going for value is a pretty frequent move on Astrolabe in particular, really cheap to redeploy that one. But, bouncing Astrolabe and then getting Chalice for one would be a pretty brutal sequence from Ray's perspective.
Yeah, not great. Looks like Ray actually has Force of Negation, though. So he's covered from Chalice. Force of Negation, another one of those busted cards from 2019. Just can't get away from him.
Yeah, it really enables the Planeswalkers. The fact that these are expensive permanents, you don't always have the time to deploy, so Force gives you kind of an escape valve to make them do something, and also gives you coverage when you tap out for them. It kind of cuts both ways really nicely.
Yeah. All right, Will Chang going to take a draw step. Another Warping Whale in the hand there. So Will does have Tron here. Yeah, and Ray Huang has double Jace, Force of Negation, and a Supreme Verdict. Pretty good leftovers.
Yeah, and a Chalice not looking particularly good on the board when Teferi is representing a proactive answer to it. So it's actually looking pretty reasonable that Ray is just not going to have to use the Force this turn.
All right, so Relco Progenitor is going to get played and cracked with that floating mana. Both graveyards are exiled here. Will going to have 3 mana in the pool. Going to use it for Expedition Map. There's 1 mana down. And then Chalice for 1 is the follow-up play here. I'd be shocked if Ray lets this resolve. He goes. Actually, he has the Teferi, I suppose, so going to go ahead and let that Chalice resolve.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid at this point just to leave the Force as Karn Ugin insurance.
Okay.
And one thing that I'm curious about right now is what is the worst thing that Expedition map is capable of finding right now? I mean, in terms of utility lands, we have Tectonic Edge, Ghost Quarter, not particularly relevant, Scavenger Grounds, and Blast Zone. I suppose Cavern of Souls could be reasonable, but so many of these creatures are going to be capable of being interacted with by the Planeswalkers that forcing them onto the battlefield isn't exactly enough for Will.
Yeah, so Ray goes ahead and grabs another island. Looks like going to be a Jace turn here. Man, he's just so set up for the next several turns in a row. And there's nothing on the battlefield for Will that, puts any pressure on Ray.
Yeah, it almost has to be a Reality Smasher here, it feels like. Will is equipped with the Warping Whale to remove the Ice Fang. He just needs the hasty threat, and with the amount of mana that's sitting around, and something like a Tron land plus a large Ballista would be quite strong here too. So those are going to be some of the, I think highest impact cards for Will. There could also be, not from his perspective, but there could be a Karn off the top. Now, he doesn't know the Force of Negation is sitting in Ray's hand, but from his side, I'm sure that's something that's on his radar as a card that he's drawing towards.
Man. All right, so Teferi going to tick up. And Will going to go ahead and crack this Expedition map. Let's see what he goes and gets. Does look like a Cavern of Souls moves to the front of the deck here. Just looks like there's a cavern. So, there's the Blast Zone is a consideration here, but, I mean, if you take a peek at Ray's board, he has a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4.
Yeah, so it's not going to be able to wipe the board. It kind of gets, it's sort of inefficient interaction for whatever Will is the most afraid of at any given time, and opting instead for the Cavern, which is reasonable because Teferi is capable of bouncing whatever threat Will could draw. Having some insurance to resolve it on the way down the following turn is probably what his priority is here.
Yeah, so Will's going to cast that Thought Knot Seer through the Cavern of Souls, so it's uncounterable. He's going to reveal Ray's hand, which is, I believe, a pair of Okos. Or there's an Oko, a Jace, a Spell Pierce. And Will's going to take that Oko. Yeah, Force of Negation, Jace the Mind Sculptor, an Island, and a Flooded Strand. So, I mean, you mentioned Ray just has the ability to bounce this Thought Knot Seer. It just doesn't really do anything. It's not making any headway. There's a Warping Whale cast on that Ice Fang, which is important. Will has to do that in his main phase because of Teferi Time Raveler being a nuisance. Yeah, and Ray hid that Supreme Verdict on top of his deck with the Brainstorm there, which is pretty important.
Yeah, heads up, you always want to be kind of shielding yourself from the possibility of a Thought Knot Seer. By the way, Will's mana was locked up for the first couple turns setting up the Expedition map. Definitely not a huge surprise that type of card could be floating around his hand. And here we see another Brainstorm yielding a couple lands in Oko. And yeah, Oko looking really good, especially combined with a Teferi bounce to kind of reset the battlefield from Will's side.
Yeah, Ray has that fetch land in hand as well to reset this brainstorm. Put a couple of those lands you mentioned, the extra ones, back on top, and yeah, he looks like he's in great shape. Again, we talked about the game plan for Ray here is just hope that Will doesn't do anything for several turns, and it took 3 turns for Will to do anything, and it's just really tough sledding. Ray's still at 17. Will has only a couple cards left in hand, and he looks like he's getting close to being locked out by these planeswalkers. Ray gonna fetch with that Misty Rainforest. A Hallowed Fountain in play. Alright, so we're gonna untap. That's a Reality Smasher. That's pretty decent.
Yeah, and here we see, the Teferi plussing, kind of ignoring the possibility of a bounce and going for more value off of the Supreme Verdict. You know your Planeswalkers cannot die with this sequence.
Yeah.
And doing so, Teferi looks like it's going to be able to get quality bounces for several turns in a row. And actually, Ray's showing a lot of excellent patience, being willing to give up over half of Teferi's loyalty to get another creature out of this end-of-turn Verdict.
Yeah, and he also, he has end-step Verdict, which is funneling through that Astrolabe. So going to draw a card after that Thought Not Seer dies. So I'm going to draw a card here. The Ceremonious Rejection. A lot worse against this Cavern of Souls, but still fairly good here. And, his battlefield's left with 2 Planeswalkers, which is pretty solid.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Teferi, go after that Chalice in the near future if Ray ever feels like he needs that Ceremonious Rejection. But yeah, I don't think right now that's a particular priority to reset. And he has multiple Planeswalkers that are capable of, at least for an instant, getting that Chalice out of the way with that Oko being picked up.
Yeah, you mentioned that play of, Oko turning the Chalice into an Elk and then bouncing it with Jace if he's so inclined, and then countering it on the way back, which is a pretty big beating. We'll see what Ray does. I mean, he has 3 Planeswalkers now. All right, so he's going to go ahead and bounce the Chalice. Draw card, and Mystic Sanctuary is the pickup there.
Yeah, not bad at all to have an extra Supreme Verdict in the tank. It's almost always going to be translatable into some solid, exchanges. Playing against a deck that's predominantly big and expensive creatures.
Yeah. So, Oko turning that Astrolabe into an Elk as Ray's starting to turn the corner here. Going to put Chang down to 17.
Yeah, and Ray with several awesome layers of protection. Force of Negation being able to handle, the Karns and Ugins of the world, and Ceremonious Rejection. I'll just checking everything else. Ray has no problem casting both of those in the same turn because, right now, that backup Jace in his hand isn't really representing a ton of value. It doesn't look like the one on the battlefield is going to die anytime soon. So he can be pretty accepting of, a 2-for-1 exchange away from his favor just because these Planeswalkers are doing so much.
Yeah, Will just says, all right, yeah. That's resolved. So Will's got a bunch of options to pick from here. It's a tough decision. This one's probably the game here. The game is definitely hinging on these cards, so that Force of Negation's pretty annoying. He's got Ceremonious Rejection. He's just got so much stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately from Will's side, we've kind of seen these multiple Warping Whales just trapped in hand almost all games. I'm sure he's wishing that it could be something a little bit more proactive. It's hard because a lot of the sideboard cards are quite poor, but oh wow, Reality Smasher is huge here, and that's knowing that there's no way to protect the Planeswalker means that Oko's down, and yeah, I mean Jace by himself, even with just a 3/3 in the way, not really great at protecting itself. But Ray does have a ability to refresh the top of his library with a fetch land, another Brainstorm, and Astrolabe all available. And actually, this fetch is going to be turning on the Mystic Sanctuary, so he can basically guarantee that Verdict is coming down next turn.
Yeah. This is a really sweet line you just mentioned there, and I'm sure we'll see Ray come to something like that. So let's see what he ends up on. Gonna untap here and draw. Looks like Field of Ruins the one too. That's a great rip. He's gonna attack for 3 into the Thought Not Seer. Wonder what that means.
I mean, I can't think of anything yet.
So Will says, all right, I'll block. And then Ray going to play a Mystic Sanctuary, which is going to put that Supreme Verdict on top. And then Brainstorm with Jace. Wow, that was... He is stacked. You see Will picks his cards up in hand, is preparing for the worst. All right. So. Will's just waiting around to be supreme verdicted.
Just the fourth level mind tricks where it's like, yeah, I'm totally okay with you doing this. Maybe
Yeah.
to the point where you wonder like, well, should I? And yeah, it's a pretty easy should. That's a great exchange. The thought knots here, giving a card back to Ray on the way out, and I believe Ray's kind of bolstered his defenses up to a second force of negation to go
Yeah.
along with everything else he has. And here we see the card that I actually think is going to be able to turn it around from Will. We actually have the Hero Matter Reshaper off the top. So
Oh,
let's talk
man.
about this one for a little bit.
That's a great top deck. Just great. All right. So Will plays a 3-2 on turn 7. And, yeah, not doing much. Ray's got Astrolabe unlocked now. And Will's just stuck with Chalice the Void and this Warping Whale, so.
Yeah, and knowing the Chalice is never going to be capable of resolving through the force that you've seen in Ray's hand means that, yeah, Will's just kind of sitting on nothing. And looks like Jace does care enough about the Reshaper to kind of send it on a temporary vacation back to Will's hand. And I'm sure we'll see that again here.
Sure. All right, there's no Eldrazi Scion for Will. Another Tron land picked up. This has always been my problem with the Tron deck for me, is I just draw infinite lands. I just get flooded out, and I just want to stop on like 4 lands, and I just never can. Just never can.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a deck that is, capable of leveraging a lot of mana very well sometimes. The games where you draw a Walking Ballista in a spot like that, you are quite ecstatic, but, otherwise you're kind of sitting on not that much. I mean, especially just with the cards that Will's drawn, he's found a kind of tough ratio of low impact spells to 6 or 7 lands, and that's a really tough thing to overcome.
Yeah. Interesting. Ray decided to cut him off of bigger mana and left that Cavern of Souls available. I thought maybe he'd go after the Cavern, but he must not care that much. Gonna use the. So Ray's going to Fate Seal Will. Look at the card and then read it. What did you think that is if you're Will? Like Sky Sovereign,
yeah,
maybe?
from not seeing it from here, I bet that was. I think it was white bordered. God, what could that even be?
I don't know. I thought it was Sky Sovereign.
He left it on top though, so I feel like
Yeah.
I guess he has forces, so a Sky Sovereign might.
It's another Tron land. Okay.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe he gave him the fake out. All right. So Jace the Mind Sculptor down.
I think it's very much in Will's character to have 4 different arts or additions for each of his Tron lands.
Okay.
So that's probably that's what caught Ray up, I'm sure.
All right. So Will knows about both cards. He knows about this Chalice that's in Will's hand also from bouncing it with Teferi several turns ago. This is a Chalice for a Jillion. Was it 3?
Yeah, chalice for 3. It's a good attempt. You have to do something to force that force out of Ray's hand so you can hopefully resolve some Planeswalker up afterwards. And we actually have seen this Matter Reshaper chipping away in like a kind of reasonable manner. It killed the first copy of Jace. Second one's going to be much more difficult to remove though, going right up to 5 loyalty with more Fate Sealing.
Yep, and Ray leaves a Chalice of the Void on top of Will's deck, which is not doing much anymore. He's got another Force of Negation. He's just going to Mana Leak this one. Ray has a Path to Exile for the Mana Reshaper. Eldrazi Scion going to start chipping down that Teferi Hero of Dominaria, but this one is all but over at this point.
Yeah, really strong showing from Bant Snow. It just seems like it is exceptionally positioned in this type of matchup where you're not super vulnerable to Chalice. You have a lot of ways to interact with these Eldrazi in profitable manners, and just these Planeswalkers, they're just so overwhelming.
Yeah, I think there was an Ugin in top of the deck. Ray just says, you can keep Ugin. When your opponent starts letting you keep spells on top of your deck, you're just in complete misery. All right, so. That's a Karn, excuse me. Snapcaster Mage for a Force of Negation. That one's pretty good. Yeah, Ray is just in dominant position here.
We might get to see the Teferi Ultimate Jace Brainstorm sequence. That's probably one of the most satisfying things you can do in Magic.
Yeah. So he bounces. He hits Will's token, and Will throws it across the room. Says, go ahead. Oh, that's great stuff. So Ray taking another draw here. Gonna continue Fate Sealing Wheels. Relic of Progenitus. What are you
Yeah, I
scared of?
suppose. I guess I'll have to Snapcaster Force that so you don't redraw. It's definitely
Oh man.
kind of exactly what you'd expect by with the phrase garbage time right now.
Yeah, we are firmly there, partner. This is great. This is fantastic. All right. You know what? Good on Will for letting Ray draw all the cards and do whatever he wants. It's really nice of him. Good friends they must be.
Yeah, my experience with control decks is I really don't get to be winning that often. So when someone lets you play from there, it's great. And yeah, Will does extend the hand in the face of the Jace Ultimate.
All right.
And yeah, Ray's going to put himself in a good position with a 1-0 record to start this pod. Another win in the next round, and he's very comfortably in top 8.
Yeah, run up the score, Ray. All right, so that was a pretty good match. I thought it was Bant Snow definitely impressed me overall. I mean, I've seen the decks that are more controlling, the ones that have spell callers. I like this version a little bit more. It's less flimsy against the removal spells. Dismember could have played a part if that was, if the spell callers were in Ray's deck, and they just weren't. So it looked pretty nice overall.
Yeah, you just do, like you mentioned, a great job of blanking opposing spot removal.
Yeah.
You have card advantage from these, difficult to remove planeswalkers. Force of Negation is going to cover a lot of your weaknesses against big mana when you tap out for them. I mean, yeah, it seems great. I guess really I think that game one could have gone either way. The quick Karn, what was that, liquid metal coating play being hit by counter spells was rough, but yeah, Ray was in basically firm control from that point on.
Yeah.
So I think that it looks like it's a real player. Any deck that can be jammed to the brim with 2019 cards is going to be a deck that I'll pay some attention to. And yeah, I don't know. This is one of the most well-rounded, true control decks I've seen in a long time in Modern.
Yeah, it's very good. People for a long time, I give everyone a hard time that played Celestial Colonnade deck. I was like, if you register Celestial Colonnade, you've just donated your entry fee to everyone else playing in the field. This could be a Celestial Colonnade deck, but it's way better than any of them have ever been.
Yeah, I actually, the one good thing about Arkham's Astrolabe is it kind of forces that out of your blue-white control decks, and I'm pretty shocked that you think so low of Azorius Guildgate. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that one, and 4% of the time it'll attack for 4 or block or something, but yeah, it's definitely the control decks have powered up in a very real way, and it's just super clean.
One of the big shining parts of that was the game 2, I think it was, where Will had, he had, or maybe it was game 1. He had Sorcerous Spyglass on the table. He had Pithing Needle on the table. And Ray still had all these planeswalkers that just dominoed into each other, thanks to Oko, of course. But it was like, okay, well, you have your answers, but they just don't matter in the face of what I'm doing. And that to me showed how powerful this deck is, like on an individual card level.
Yeah, it was brutal for Will because the planeswalkers that he saw and had to answer first were the ones, Jace and Teferi, that, were the ones that were smaller numbers in his deck. So he had to answer those, and there were still lots of baby Teferi, lots of Okos for Ray to draw from there and kind of unlock his ability to kind of go off. And yeah, it's just they snowball so fast.
Yeah, it was crazy. So at any rate, it looks like all of our matches are getting wrapped up here. So we're wrapping up round number 7. We have 2 more rounds of Modern left, and then we're going to crown a top 8. So we'll be back here in just a few minutes with our 8th round with some more Modern action.